it's the biggest show on Netflix, and that is saying something about Netflix. 142 million households have now tuned in and are tuning in to watch Squid Game.
Yes.
Hang on. Squid Game. It's from South Korea.
What happened there?
It's, the false tooth just slipped slightly.
Oh, OK.
Yeah, it's a South Korean programme. It's a kind of dystopian drama, and it's all centred around innocent-looking children's games. But these are games with brutal, deadly consequences.
Yes, and schools are now warning parents against letting their children watch it due to its violent nature and fears that children are recreating the dangerous scenes. It's not the only violent show, though, of course, young audiences have been exposed to, and it is an age-old debate. Kira Durkin looks back. Well, we're joined now by crime writer Mark Billingham, who says Squid Game will not turn our children into monsters, but parenting expert Jane Evans disagrees. Jane, you think this level of violence has no place on young people's screens. I mean, there is an age restriction on this game, but nowadays, you know, when Netflix doesn't have a watershed, children can watch it, can't they?
Absolutely. And, you know, do our parents need any more pressure? No. And what we know with games like this is they go viral in a heartbeat, and then the parents are under pressure. Oh, everyone's watching it, let me watch it. And sometimes parents don't have time, you know, to monitor everything. And before they know it, depending on how persuasive their child is being exposed to something which is deeply graphically violent. I've watched a clip of it, and you know, they don't have the emotional and psychological maturity, especially the young children who are having access to it, to make any sense of this. And you know, it's very disturbing, the things that teenagers talk to me when I work with them. And we know that these droplets of normalising graphic violence do have a long-term impact.
Jane, just watching these clips now, and obviously we're not showing the extreme violence. And I have to say, it is extremely violent, it's extremely gory, and it is very chilling and frightening. I wonder whether there's an added element. As we watch this picture, these are children's games which are depicted in a nasty way. And is that something that adds to your concern for children? Because as they watch it, they would assume these games are, you know, something to feel safe around, and then they turn nasty.
Exactly. Such a brilliantly made point. You know, children don't have childhoods like we do because of the digital age. And there are great things about the digital age, but their brains haven't changed in the last few years. So things that scare us as adults are terrifying for children, but they can't make any sense of them. And especially very young children, they don't understand, oh, that is just a program, those are actors. It all becomes very messed up, and something that is beautiful, innocent, fun, that we want them to do, interact with their peers, run around the playground, is becoming something dark and scary. And honestly, it gets very kind of tangled up in their minds because they can't make sense of it.
I just wonder, though, if we've frankly been here before. I mean, I look back on my school days, my junior school days, pre-12. We used to play cowboys and westerns in the playground, and we used to shoot each other with our pretend Colt pistols at point-blank range. We used to shoot each other in the head. We used to shoot each other in the back. We'd have executions. We'd have shooting galleries where people were shot down, and people would writhe on the floor in pretend agony. Isn't that part? I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Isn't that actually part, that hyperbole of fictional violence? It's part of growing up, isn't it? To play act violence. All children do. All children play act it. I'm not quite sure what's changed.
Not all children, Richard. No, not all children. Definitely not. It's the fact that children. It's the imagery. I mean, I can still see the images from the clip I watched yesterday. Every time I think about Squid Game now, I've got somebody having. You know, it's really disturbing. They're bombarded with a lot more imagery than they were, and they can't cope with it. I mean, you know, yes, we saw cowboy movies, and from a distance you saw somebody, you know, and of course that's not great either, but you cannot have your cake and flipping eat it. We are in a major global crisis with violence in the home, violence in our streets. Every day there's terrible things going on, teenage violence, violence. So, you know, if we can all do something, as I'm now a grandparent, grandparents, parents, to just allow our children to be shielded from as much violence as we can. I mean,
well, let's put that to Mark Billingham. Mark, you're a crime writer. You presumably focus quite a lot on nasty stuff, violent stuff. Is it healthy to have all of this available in our culture? There's quite a sophisticated storyline going on. You know, you do watch it and ask lots of questions about human behaviour and how we're all influenced. And in this day and age of 24-hour availability of television, you know, what do we do about restricting our children watching it? Well,
what you said is absolutely true. It is a very smart show. It's a very smart and entertaining show. And I think there's a danger that we're focusing on the fact that it's hyper-violent, it's hugely gory. As you said in your introduction, it's no more violent than a dozen other shows I could mention straight away. And what this puts me in mind of is the thing that happened in the early 80s, the focus on the so-called video nasties. That was going to turn our children into sort of soulless, dead-eyed monsters. And of course, it was nonsense. It was all scaremongering. It was a sort of moral panic that was cooked up with sort of fake statistics and false news stories and stuff that had never happened. And this rolls round every sort of decade or so. Every decade or so, they'll pick a show or a film or whatever it might be and talk about the horrendous dangers of it. Look, I wouldn't sit down with a 6-year-old and watch Squid Game any more than I would sit down and watch it, you know. Sorry?
I said no, I'm agreeing with you.
That's the point. People are.
Well, is that a question of how terribly violent this show is, or how irresponsible some parents are? I mean, it's a different, you know, if you're going to sit down with a small child, with a junior school age child, and watch a really, really violent show, then I would question that.
That is the question.
Sorry, can I just cut in with a question? I wonder if what we're talking really about here, it's the moral dimension, isn't it? This is an entertainment show. It's completely fictional, and it's aimed at mostly young people. But it's all pretend. I haven't seen, in the clips that I've seen...
It's aimed at young people.
Well,
I would say, actually, I would think it's aimed at an older audience, an adult audience,
all right, well,
but it's picked up by young people, of course.
OK, well, that's... All right, that's a kind of moot point. But that's not what I was going to say. I mean, I remember going to see Saving Private Ryan. And the opening sort of 15 minutes of that film is the most violent thing I've ever seen on the screen. It's extraordinary. But it was accepted because it was a rendition of what actually happened on Omaha Beach in 1944, where real men went into battle and died. And the director of that film demonstrated what that actually means in terms of bullets going through heads and explosions and mortars going off and people being blown to pieces. I went there with my teenage son. He had to leave. We both left. He touched me about halfway through and said, "Dad, I can't watch this anymore." And we left. But it was seen as justified because it was in the context of real history and history within living memory. Is the moral dimension of this argument the fact that it's just sheer entertainment, glitzy entertainment? But the levels of violence are about the same.
Exactly. And the thing is that we do so much nowadays to protect our children because we love them so much. I mean, as I say, I've just become a grandparent and I will be doing everything in my power to allow my grandchild, you know, with my son and my daughter-in-law, to have a childhood that's magical. Children are full of imagination. They're very creative little beings. So let's not fill their childhoods with darkness and things that they honestly, they think about these things.
What do you think about Mark's point? But what do you not take Mark's point that we've been here before? We've done the debates. Hang on, darling, just let me finish the question. We've done the debates about video nasties, haven't we? We've had debates about X-rated horror movies and all the rest of it. And he's right. It hasn't turned our children into dead-eyed monsters going out into the playground and really acting out what they've seen.
But if you look in the media or even social media, I work on a programme that supports children who've experienced domestic violence and abuse with Innovating Minds. During the pandemic, the rates of domestic violence went through the roof. We cannot deny that we live in a world, never mind, just in the UK, where we are having young women killed in our streets, teen violence, stabbings and things are a massive problem. We had the horrific death of the MP recently. You cannot, as I said before, you can't have your cake and eat it and go, oh, let's not worry about this stuff. Okay. Because at the same time, we have a massive problem with violence normalised.
Mark, we do have this issue, definitely, of violence in society. The question is how much of it is fuelled by the violence that we see on screen?
I would argue none of it. I mean, I don't quite understand what you're talking about in terms of having your cake and eat it. No, nobody is arguing that the violence in society is horrendous. But to single out a television show as a sort of scapegoat for this kind of stuff just seems ridiculous to me, because apart from anything else, it allows those whose policies perhaps are enabling certain degrees of violence on the streets and so on to sort of get away with it and point at and it is the media. It's a kind of media-driven bit of scaremongering. Yeah. And these stories will crop up of children doing this in the playground, children doing that in the playground. And as Richard pointed out, children's games are inherently cruel. To suddenly turn around and go, oh, there's a huge rise in bullying, like bullying at school never happens and has never, this kind of thing, I think, is really rather dangerous. Because, again, as you said in the introduction, to be fair, you've seen a clip of this show, Jane, a clip. I'd be interested to know which clip you
I couldn't watch any more without,
I've watched the entire show, which is a very smart and interesting show. The violence is necessary. These people and who are playing this game have chosen to play this game. They have left the game, then come back to the game. It's about kind of inequality and desperation and greed and voyeurism and all that stuff. It's a deeply watchable and entertaining and smart show.
And there we have to leave it. We have to leave it there, I'm afraid. We're out of time.
Mark, Jane, thanks very much indeed. It isn't recommended for children under 15. It does have a recommendation of mature audiences of 15 and over. Netflix say they offer a wide variety of parental controls, including maturity filters, to help families make the right viewing choice. The trouble is, if someone has seen it and then they put it on TikTok or they put it on social media, that it's out there, isn't it?